Since its release, I've been playing quite a bit of Brighter Shores, and overall, my experience has really been positive. But, going into his first impressions, I do want to set some expectations. This is not RuneScape. It's a game that Andrew Gower himself describes as a passion project. In other words, it's an indie title by a small team. So when I see things like the game isn't a massive open world and it's instead enclosed tiles, I can very much understand why. But also, when I see the amount of joy and love and care that's been put into crafting the world, well, I can see that as well. And I bring this all up because on the one hand, I think game comparison is great, but on the other hand, sometimes things can go too far. So like I already said, the world is made up of different tiles, and pretty much every tile has something for you to do. In some cases, you're going to be training skills. For example, at the apothecary, you're combining various herbs and other things you collect throughout the world to make potions. Whereas if you enter the Delectable Dab restaurant, you're probably going there to do some cooking, or maybe to cook some specific dishes and then deliver them to various townfolk around Hopeport. This is one of the very fun little minigames that I hope to see more of as I continue exploring the game. Now, you can buy most of the materials you need for both alchemy and also cooking by simply going to a vendor right outside the building. However, their prices are not necessarily cheap, and you'll need money to buy tools and various other supplies for your adventuring. So, it's a lot better to maybe take the initiative and go out and do some exploration, in which case you'll be practicing both your foraging and your fishing. Foraging is for things like plants, flowers, and medicinal herbs, whereas fishing is for, well, fish. Honestly, I don't know what you're expecting me to say there. Did you think that you go out and you fish up coffee cakes? You know what? On second thought, that actually seems like a really good idea. Then you have combat. Basically, take out your weapon of choice, smack an enemy till it's dead, or until you die. There aren't too many things you can do, especially at the start, though you are able to use potions to recover some health. But as you level up, you're going to get a few more options. Things like using potions to buff yourself, or executing one of several weapons' special attacks. Now, when it comes to quests and dialogue, the game doesn't take itself too seriously. For example, the introductory framing device of a tutorial is that you've signed up to be a city guard, or I guess town guard, for Hopeport. And throughout, of course, the various officers continually remind you that you need to use sir and ma'am. This is a professional environment. But the dialogue options constantly give you an opportunity to not do that. And if you choose to indulge yourself, you'll promptly be told that's unacceptable and forced to do 5 push-ups. In addition to this, there are a lot of really nice details that cause the quests to feel like they're really part of a world. Say if you need to go to the hairdresser, well, if you're wearing a helmet, they can't cut your hair. Makes perfect sense, but it's usually the sort of thing that video games just kind of hand-wave and say, no, it's fine, you don't need to take your helmet off, we can somehow provide you with a perfect haircut regardless. Some quests even offer you multiple progression paths, basically letting you choose between A, do I grind a skill up and use that to solve my problems, or B, do I think my way out of my problems? Because yes, very much like RuneScape, the quest design in Brighter Shores rewards you for out-of-the-box thinking. This is far from a very simple, oh, just go kill 5 wolves and then get back to me. Instead, you're actually going to be talking to people and solving their problems. And sometimes they're pretty darn aware as well. A good example of this being, you're a city guard. If you look and act like a city guard, people are going to treat you as such. So while dealing with shady characters, you might want to stash your armor somewhere where people can't see it. It's touches like these that really make the world come alive, at least in my opinion. So the basic gameplay loop is, you pick what you want to do, be it raise your combat level, complete a quest, or do some non-combat skills. Then you go out and you find the task and you start to grind. One thing I've noticed is you're always going to feel a sense of progression. At least at lower levels, every 2 levels something new unlocks, and there's a huge diversity of different resources from zone to zone. This is because, over time, resources increase in rarity. In other words, one of the first fish you catch might be the eel. But as you continue to play and as you continue to level your fishing, later on, you'll get gray eels and then stone eels, higher level versions of the same thing in the same spot. So you get this really interesting feeling of the world growing alongside your character. Also, having all the repeat things happen in the same zone means number 1, you know where to go to get back to something, and number 2, more of the zones feel unique, because there's very few repeats between the resources. I found in general there are some, primarily so that you don't deal with spawn gating, but it's not like there's 80 zones, all of which have the low-level resource, and then 80 more zones, all of which have the medium-level resource. There's a wide variety, and sometimes it's non-linear. You might find a high-level material and need to come back later, or you might be in a relatively high-level zone while gathering a lower-level material. The other thing to keep in mind is the game is currently split up into multiple different episodes. So, the first episode is Hopeport, where you play as the city guard. The second episode is Hope Forest. This offers a new storyline, more quests to complete, and more completely unique skills to engage with. So in some senses, every time you enter a new area, you're going to be starting from zero. But as you build things up, there is somewhat of a cumulative effect. For example, when you craft a bunch of potions in Hopeport, you can then take those into Hope Forest and use them in combat, thus giving yourself an advantage. Some of the things you craft and farm, you'll have uses for. In the future, you're also going to be able to sell some of them to other players, or at the very least, trade some of them with other players. So I think most people are going to focus on gear and things they need for quests here. But there's also going to be vendors that buy in pretty much unlimited quantities the things that you want, giving you some money to spend on tools and other upgrades. With all that said, Brighter Shores is a game about grinding. If you are not here to grind, then this probably isn't going to be for you. But if you are here to grind, it has a surprisingly cozy and welcoming atmosphere. Because like I said, this is a passion project. It is clearly not a mass market product. It's not made to appeal to the most number of people. It's just supposed to be a cool world where you can hang out. And as a result, this is a great cozy MMO. In fact, I think an apt comparison for Brighter Shores might actually be Palia rather than RuneScape. The music is lo-fi beats to grind to. You can spend a lot of time doing very little and just kind of hanging out with the people around you. And as for the quests, well yeah, you're going to use your noodle to figure things out, but none of them are overly hostile or challenging. It's not like you enter a PvP zone and all of a sudden all the loot that you've been farming is just gone. Worst case, you'll die, get resurrected, and hopefully learn from your mistakes. Plus, because each of the skills has their own path of progression that's built in, and that the skill reminds you of as you keep leveling up, it's very hard to feel truly lost, even when there is a lot to do. So here are just a couple clips to help you get a better feel for the world and atmosphere. So overall, I've had a very positive experience so far with Brighter Shores. With that said, the game is in early access and it's certainly not perfect. So here are a few things that I've noticed which are a bit annoying or otherwise frustrating. First up, the combat UI is clunky. The intended experience is that you first select the enemy, then you choose to attack them with your ranged weapon, getting in a little free damage as they close distance. Then you swap to one of the melee weapons and finish out the fight. But that's a lot of clicking, which, sure, that might seem strange, right? You don't have to hit any abilities in combat, it's just a few clicks of a start. But it makes feeling the fight seem very clunky. I'd rather just click once to be able to swap to my ranged weapon, and then smoothly or automatically swap to my melee weapon when the ranged weapon runs out of ammo. As a small disclaimer, there actually has been a hotfix that came in as I was scripting and recording this video, which changed things up a little bit. You can now use keybinds to swap between different weapons. That said, I would still like to see some easier way to initiate with a preferred weapon from the start of a fight. This would also help if you're in a contested area and trying to tag a mob before someone else does. Now my next complaint is more of a social thing. It's hard to rejoin a specific instance, meaning if you were just chilling and chatting with someone and you had to move to a different instance for whatever reason, well, unless you added them as a friend, there's no way to continue that conversation. I think the social aspect is really important in a game like Brighter Shores. So having some sort of instance browser where I could say, all right, I want to rejoin the Delectable Dab 3 as opposed to the Delectable Dab 5, and possibly even a preferred instance so that you can meet up with people, would honestly be a big improvement. In my opinion, minigames are one of the best things that RuneScape did, and one of the things that really set RuneScape apart from many other MMOs. Because many MMOs, it's just the game. That's it. But in RuneScape, you have a ton of different things you can do. There's a version of Minesweeper, there's Trouble Brewing, which admittedly was more frustrating than fun. But hey, it's something different. There are the agility arenas, and all of these different minigames made the experience feel much richer. There is some of that, such as with the bounties, but I'd definitely like to see a few more, especially if they're accessible early on. Now last up, there's two types of activities, active and passive. Active activities are what you're doing when you're playing the game. Passive ones can be done fully AFK and even keep going when you're logged out. But the passive activities are much worse in terms of rewards and experience. Now, I do think having passive activities is a good thing. It's a way to gain experience and gain progression, even when you're offline or when you're busy with real life. But it feels like there may be a few too many of them out in the world. Sure, having a couple, one for each profession, sounds great. But constantly coming across them does feel a little bit weird, because that's something that I probably won't be farming when I'm paying attention, or even when I'm logged in and playing the game. So in the case of the passive activities, I'd like to see them consolidated a little bit more. Now to be clear, I'm not saying, oh, just leave it at the low level ones and make them suck. I would want them to scale with your level in some way, so you still get meaningful EXP, but as I'm going out through the world and exploring, I do want to encounter things that I can actually do. And so, what's my verdict on Brighter Shores? It's not RuneScape. It is very much a passion project with a limited scope made by a small team. And yes, it's early access, so there's gonna be some rough edges. But it is also a breath of fresh air in comparison to the big games made for mass appeal that you see far too often these days. And it also feels like it's going to be much better as a play at your own pace or solo experience where you meet some friends along the way than games where you have to rush to endgame and you're constantly feeling like you're falling behind. Because the pace of this game is straight out of the 2000s. There are capes along the way to mark your progress, but there really isn't an endgame in the same way. It's not like you need to get to max level and then go fight bosses, because once you're max level, a vast majority of the game and its content are behind you. In other words, Brighter Shores is about the journey, not the destination, and so there's always a feeling of something new to do and something different to progress. But like I said at the top, the game is 100% free to try. You can play through all the content of the first 2 episodes without paying for membership. So I strongly recommend that you try it for yourself, and if you like it, then pay for membership upon reaching episode 3. If you don't like it, well, Andrew Gower said he expects a year of early access before the release. So if you want to see what the game's like with a more polished version, well, get subscribed, and hey, you made it to the end of the video, so maybe leave a like while you're down there, because so far I've been having a lot of fun. And regardless of how much I play now, if I end up doing an early access review or anything like that, I'm definitely going to be returning after the early access period to see where the game ends up. With that said, for everyone who has already played Brighter Shores, what do you think? Let me know some of your thoughts down in the comments below. With that said, I need to get back to exploring Hope Forest, because I really want to see how the game feels after I get a few more of the quality of life features, and now that I've unlocked my class, how the gear is. So with that, thank you very much for watching to the end. If you're looking for something else to watch, maybe check out my thoughts on the early access of TCG Card Shop Simulator, another game that had really nice cozy vibes. I'll leave that up in the card and down below. For now, thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed. Have fun on your journey, and I'll see you in the next one.